Greetings. It's funny how things work out. Sometimes it appears things are meant to be. For some reason, yesterday I was just had the idea of what is good counseling pop into my mind. It just seemed like particularly in these days, a very important topic. But it's always an important topic. What is counseling? Who are our counselors? Well, our counselors could be the people who do services for us in different ways. I mean, a lawyer is your counselor, right? His main thing is to file papers. Maybe what he's doing is something that you could do yourself, but you just don't quite trust yourself. So you want to make sure you're going to someone who has a broader understanding of the topic that you can depend on. And then when they mess up, that's a really big deal, isn't it? Other people are counselors. Your mechanic is your counselor. Your air conditioning man is your counselor. They give you information, and then you decide what you ought to do. So, but counseling isn't always good. And where is the counselor coming from? Are they coming for looking at your best interest, or are they looking at their own interest? And so, I've had a couple of those over the years. I'll give you a couple of examples. One was I had a problem with a water pump in the car. This was 25 years ago or more. Had a problem with the water pump in the car and had to have it replaced. I took a trip down to family, and I took it. There was something I was listening to. There was some issue I was a little bit concerned about as we drove down. It was an 8-hour drive. And so I took it to the dealership, and the guy said, "Sir, come in here." And he had this iron rod, some kind of tool. But he said, "You can listen to this." And he put it down on the motor, and he said, "You hear that? Hey, you got a problem with your water pump." I said, "Look, I just had my water pump replaced. I don't have a problem with my water pump." Now, older cars, and this was a little sort of an older car, having a problem with the water pump, and that happens on occasion. But this guy was trying to, I was on vacation and he was taking advantage of me. I think that's what was going on. He wasn't going to see me anymore. It didn't matter what I did, in all likelihood, right? He was just taking advantage of me. I had another situation where I went into one car shop. This was another up in Atlanta when I was living up there. And boy, you know how you can go into certain of these places like Firestone or something. It doesn't have to be that, but that's just whatever that might be. But it's a brand kind of place, right? Goodyear, whatever it is. They're not all the same. They're run by different people, so I don't want to disparage them in general. But you go in and they did a computer printout of everything that was wrong with my car that I need to have done to my car. And man, my car was in bad shape, and I said, well, let me think about it. And I drove down the road, probably not more than a mile or two. And I thought, I'm going to pull into another place. And I pulled into another place. The guy looked at my car and says, "Your problem is your tie rods. You need to replace your tie rods." I got my tie rods replaced. One guy was just trying to make money. He was calling out everything he could to try to sucker me into doing everything I would agree to do in my foolishness and ignorance. And the other guy told me what I needed to know. He took care of me. That's what a good counselor does. Okay? And we've got many stories about counselors throughout history. And I'll tell you, it was interesting. I thought I'd go online and try to look for, English kings, bad counseling. Certainly, if you're watching I'm sure if you get into the history of things, you find this. Certainly, if we're watching stories about English kings and their counts and battles and the rises and falling, there's people who give different kings bad counsel or good counselor. Sometimes kings kill good counselors because they don't like what they're saying. But nonetheless, my point I'm trying to make is I couldn't find anything. I mean, not at a cursory look, just as a topic. Hey, what was counseling? It was piles of Christian-oriented counseling just filling up my pages. Different people writing on good counsel. But just Not much otherwise. But I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just saying it's interesting, I guess, that Christian entities think it's important that counseling is good counseling. Okay. Um, and so we can go through culture. And, in some of the uh, Indian scripture, Hindu, Buddhist, what I guess it's Hindu scripture, you've got stories about like King Harishchandra, and he had bad counsel. So this isn't just limited to um, a Christian worldview. This is a person, humanity's worldview. We know this. We got people going to counseling all the time. So a few more that are well known, and what I thought was interesting is today here I am, I'm just watching a program, and they're talking about Nebuchadnezzar and Daniel, and how Nebuchadnezzar has this dream, and he calls in all his various counselors, magicians, and all kind of other counselors, and he asks them what does his dream mean, and they can't figure it out. I guess they didn't want to make a mistake, so they just bowed out. And then he called in Daniel, and Daniel tells him what the dream is about. He doesn't hold any punches. He tells him what's going on in the dream. Um, he's a good counselor because he doesn't pull any punches. Then you have people like Ahab and Jezebel, who was actually counseled correctly well by Micaiah, I think. Micaiah, anyway, whatever his name is, Micah. And he gave good counsel. They decided to ignore his counsel. You have Job, who got very poor counseling from his wife and from his friends. You've probably read that. If not, go read Job. And in the end, God comes along and says, "You've got some pretty rotten counselors. You need to straighten up and fly right." So there's plenty of examples of bad counseling. I could go on and on. Now, so what is counseling today? I can tell you, in my opinion, this is Mark's opinion. I've participated in counseling multiple times. Because when I was younger, in particular, I'm trying to get my act together. I have a tinge of perfectionist in me, or maybe a great deal of it. I don't know. Uh, and I was willing when somebody suggested, "Hey, why don't you go to counseling?" I go, "Well, all right, I'll take a shot at it." In fact, when I was doing theological divinity training, well, that was sort of part of the deal anyway. If an issue came up, they'd say, "Well, why don't you go to some counseling and look into that?" Because don't want crazy people in the pulpit, right? Not that they don't get them sometimes, but if something becomes sort of like, wait, that was sort of odd. Why did he say that? And it makes one of your faculty sort of wonder, what's going on with that. You might want to iron that out. Anyway, so I had purpose, reason, a couple of times to go to counseling. Uh, my brother had issues, so I went to codependence anonymous for a while, and counseling related to that. But so I'm not, and I was when I was younger, I was all gung ho with counseling is a great thing. Um, so I didn't have a problem with it. And again, I wanted to get myself in good shape. So I was willing to let's deal with it. Let's face whatever there is. Okay, let's go see somebody and get some talk. Have somebody help me out with it. Well, and for me, part of that was I hadn't had a lot of anger when I was younger, and I frankly don't know that I've ever gotten rid of it. But I wanted to deal with it when I was younger. So anyway, I went to counseling. That's enough about myself. So, but what since I'm not I'm well versed in it. That's what I'm trying to say. And as the years have gone by, I've come to the conclusion that it's not that it's worthless in every circumstance. Certainly, if you don't have anyone to talk to, and you need to hash through some stuff and have somebody to bounce your thoughts off of, it's a beneficial thing. If we think we're going to go to somebody who's going to fix us, well, you're in danger. Because if you go to somebody who thinks they're going to fix you and thinks they got the answers for you, when often it's, here's some drugs, take these drugs. This will take care of you. That's not the answer. It may be something that's a short term. Maybe there is a short term situation that some prescription might help you for, you know, in a short term. But really, from my experience, the issues I had pretty much years ago, I still have the same issues. And maybe that's my failing, right? I don't think so. I mean, you grow up. You grow up and you learn how to deal with things, right? That's life. Life is dealing with reality. That's the point, pretty much of what I'm addressing here, is whether or not your counselor is helping you deal with reality. Now, unfortunately, counseling is often, well, oh, how do you feel about that? So, what do you think about that? Your counselor doesn't tell you anything. All they do is ask you questions and let you bounce stuff around. And you can spend your whole life. You listen, look at these people in Hollywood. You know, they're always talking about how their counselor, their psychiatrist, they're just going and talking about themselves to somebody. You know, and that's, it's often it's nothing but self-centeredness. We're just going, and we can afford, if you can afford to pay somebody to listen to you. I remember listening, hearing a situation where George Harrison hired like a call girl, and she was surprised because he just wanted to talk. So that's the story she told. Whether that's a true story or not, I don't know. But that's and do I think that's plausible? Certainly. I mean, think about a guy who he can't go anywhere. These Beatles were not locked inside of buildings most of the time, running from building to car and etc. In their early days, and so that's not a surprising story. So I don't take it as it may well be true. So sometimes people just need to talk to somebody, and they can afford to talk to them, and they're stars and can't go anywhere else, so they just shell out the money and talk to somebody. So the question is, does counseling really help us? How do we grow in counseling? I'm not saying that you can't grow through counseling. Certainly, it's good to have somebody who will recognize an issue and throw it back at you and try to get you to think about it. If you're totally trying to run away from an issue that is a critical issue, okay? And of course, our modern counseling, a lot of it is all the psychological stuff about going back until your childhood and everything else. And I'm not saying that there aren't things in your childhood that have you sort of locked up in certain ways, right? They certainly, it does affect you. But I just, from my experience, it's like if you're spending years in counseling, what's going on? So, now, then we have the church, pastoral counseling. I've done that too. Let's go see the minister and talk about an issue. Okay, I've got a couple of different circumstances of that. One was, it was just wishy-washy. It was just well been going to a secular counselor, right? There was no punch to it. There was no real counseling. Let me put it that way. And I'm going to talk in a minute about what counseling is again. And then I went to see the pastor, and he just sort of passed me off. He sent me off to a Christian counseling center to let somebody else talk to me. And I'm going, what? I'm looking for spiritual counseling from a pastor. And he's just shifting me off to where somebody said, so how do you feel about that? What do you think about that? And they, I guess they were Christians, but they said the same thing to me that people who weren't talking to me as Christians said to me. So I don't know what's going on with that. Anyway, what is a counselor? Well, we go back here to these counselors that I was talking about earlier, Nebuchadnezzar and Daniel as a counselor, Joseph was a counselor to the Pharaoh, right? These people told him the truth. And Micaiah, he told the king the truth. That's what a good counselor is. These guys who are just trying to keep their jobs, they're not good counselors. You need to hear the truth. That's what counseling is. Counseling isn't talking to a wall. I can sit in my room and talk to myself and hear myself because that's essentially all I did when I went to counseling. Just talking to myself. Well, there was somebody in the room with me who asked me a few questions, but it's like I can imagine. I can clearly I can talk to myself. I'm essentially talking to myself right now because I don't know if there's anybody there listening to me. Right. So good counseling is actually getting counsel. Good when we go to the lawyer, we want counsel. We want real advice based on real solid stuff. We don't want the lawyer to go, well, I don't know. How do you feel about your will? Would you like to do something illegal? Of course, he's going to say, this is what you need to do. Okay? And this is where I get into my issue with counseling, particularly in the church, because people who go to counseling in a church should be getting good counseling, right? And well, I think the first step is that counseling should be coming every time they walk into a sanctuary and hear a sermon. That's where counseling. That's counseling, and part of the problem that we've had with our churches today is that we're getting this what we call pastoral care kind of stuff. They don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. You can't. Everybody is acceptable. Your truth. So many churches have actually bought into the bull that your truth is as good as my truth. Well, that's not true. I mean, if my truth is evil, then your truth is certainly better than my truth. But from a pulpit, the truth at all times should be preached, and it shouldn't be based on whether my aunt Sally is a participant in a particular lifestyle or not. Okay, uh, regardless of what it is. Okay, if it's a lifestyle that doesn't fit the Bible, then we shouldn't beat around the bush about that. We should be counseled on what is a biblical faith, a biblical life. If you're going to church, if you're going somewhere else, you're going to get counseled on that. And I would say that it's in all likelihood, if you're going to a mosque, you're going to get counseled. Anything said there, they're probably not mixing in other stuff with that. So that's where counseling should actually be happening, is from the pulpit, so that you get good counsel and then you apply that sermon to your life, right? You don't need to go see the pastor and sit in his office with him, okay? For good counsel. Now, if you need somebody to get you through a rough spot, you probably don't. Your pastor would be one of the people who might help you, but there should be other people in your church community who are holding you accountable. That's what a good counsel. I know I relayed to you before the incident where years ago I was having a Bible study and a guy came in who we all knew and everything. He came in and he started sharing with us about how he was bedding women at the new church he had visited, a church he had visited recently, and just saying it like like we were sitting in a pub, a bar, a college room. You know, none of us. Now, I didn't want to scare him off. It's the first day he'd been there, so I didn't challenge him there. But we should have. We probably should have. Probably wouldn't have made a difference to whether he came. It's not like he came forever anyway. He might have come a few more times and didn't show up anymore, right? So, people who are nurturing you should be good counselors to you as well. That's my point. So, in the end, and if you don't have a pastor that you go and listen to a sermon from, or if you've got a pastor who's just giving you little feel-good sermons, then you need your counseling to come directly from the Bible. The Bible is a book of counsel. Often people don't want to hear it. They don't want to agree with it. They have their own, they're in rebellion. They want to believe whatever they want to believe, and they don't want to believe what is in the Bible. But it's good counsel. And frankly, a lot of these stories that histories of the kings and everything, and the bad counsel they got helps you to know, well, what kind of stuff, that was bad. What should I do? What would I do if I was in that situation? So, in fact, I would say there's so much in the Bible that represents the weakness of humanity and how we need to get past or get through or deal with our weakness as we move through life, right? So, a lot of people like to read Proverbs because it's clearly counseling, right? It's good counsel. But Proverbs is not the only thing, and one should not limit themselves to reading Proverbs. I'm not saying you shouldn't read Proverbs. I'm just saying there's other counsel in the Bible. So, we need to remember that Adam and Eve got some pretty bad counsel. And that counsel was, surely God wouldn't do that. Isn't that the counsel you get all the time right now today? Surely God, no, you can do whatever you want to do. Surely God, who loves us, would not condemn us to eternal hell for our choices. Our choices should be all okay. Whatever we choose should be okay. Surely God wouldn't condemn us, even though we're choosing to be in rebellion. Surely, no, God wouldn't. He wouldn't do what he's promised to do. That's what the Bible counsels you about, is that there's a God who created you, who has been faithful to you and faithful to his intent throughout, has been patient and graceful in that process. But at some point, we're going to come to the point where he's going to say, well, look, I've been patient and graceful as one could ever expect, and you've been rebellion forever. And I'm going to leave you to your rebellion, but you can't come be with me. You're in rebellion. I can't have a rebel sitting in my presence. It just doesn't work that way. And I've been telling you that for thousands of years. Read the Bible. You'll find out. Anyway, that's what I think is true. Now, if you know that something else is true, well, tell me, because as I've told you many times, I want to know what is true. And if I'm wrong about it, then I need to get straightened out. I need to be held accountable. I need to have good counsel from other people. And so I'm interested in what is true. And as I have said to you before, if you've watched before, if you want to know what is true, and that's what's important to you, then I believe all you have to do is turn to your Creator and say, God, I want to know what's true. I don't care whether I like it or not. I don't care if it causes me some emotional pain or not. I want to know the truth, because the truth will set me free. And I think you'll find it. Have a good day.